Assalamu alaikum, my listeners. My name is Usman Najim. I'm here to present on a very important topic of English literature. This topic is about modern drama. And when we have to discuss modern drama, we need to discuss modernism as a movement. Because whenever you try to analyze certain forms of fiction, be it drama, novel, or anything, then you have to consider the background, the underpinnings of those societies. So, when we will discuss these things, we would have a clear vision about modern drama. So, I would we need to consider that modernism came when there were two horrific and horrid wars of the world. Uh, that's why we call it world wars. So World War One and Two was contained in this period, or maybe more likely it was a part of these movement these wars had certain repercussions, and these aftermath, these repercussions were affected the minds of the people. They were fed up with the horrors of war. They were fed up with, uh, and if you see Virginia Woolf's novel, Mrs. Dalloway, you understand what you can clearly understand what was the frame of mind at the time when modernism was uh, uh, at the time when modernism was uh, uh, when modernism came into being. uh, it's a 20th century novel, but it is close to that period of modernism. So uh, we, we find that people were fed up with life. They wanted to die. And that is a certain sort of disorder, a mental disorder, when you have phobias, when you have hysteria, when you have why? Because these wars were cruel, and they were they were imposed on the people uh, by some elements that uh, by some elements who were not sincere with if, their sincerity was not with the people, rather it was point scoring, or it was a sort of not it was not some very good uh, feelings about people. It was about their own selves and their vested interests. uh, uh, Starting my first slide, i would I would start because we are trying to read modern drama. We are trying. I'll be teaching you modern drama. So I would, uh, before I go to those poets, before I start with the poets, I would like to give you an introduction of the modern drama. The characteristics of human life when these modern wars, modern dramas came. Uh, these are certain elements uh, of human at that time, because and they are it is very essential to read them, so that uh, so that you could uh, uh, have a certain estimation of what was the background and what was the historical impact. My next point is the historical impact. Then we will discuss the conditions of the country, whether there was inflation, which movements were there when modernism or modern drama came into being, poets and writers of the time, their disposition, uh, uh, and that is mentalities and opinions, rule of law at that time. So these are the certain factors that need to be considered when you analyze modern drama. Characteristics of uh, humans living at that time when the modern drama came. What were these elements of human living at the time when these modern dramas came? Were uh, uh, they were a they were I would discuss it with I would say things in a nutshell, but this is a very big movement. Uh, it contained many things. It contained many elements um, 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 in its point of action. So please, I would go to the next slide discussing all these elements. So the next slide, and there are characteristics, the same sentence that I've been repeating. I've repeated so many times. This is main emphasis on marriage. There was a time now uh, marriage is a sort of contract, a civil contract, which after which a male and a female lives together happily. So when these wars came and there was some sort of commotion in this period, uh, marriage, importance of marriage was very prominent, because marriage, when you try to marry somebody, or you try to when you start your marital life, you are gifted with a friend from whom you can share things. You can you can share things. You can you are the best friends, and being best friends, uh, the other partner gives you relief, and it's a give and take process. So so I would think that it was an escapist sort of situation, uh, when there was a there was a significant increase in marriages uh, because of the uh, tensions and anxieties of that time. Then there was parental control. Parents are very important. Parents are very important when you discuss uh, uh, when you discuss the olden times. Without the permission of them, you could never take decisions. Decisions were taken centrally through a central department, which were your elders. It was good to some extent, but there were discrepancies, there were reservations. So parental control had its positive side, but uh, it was a sheer murder of freedom of a man and his right to freedom of expression. When there was joint family systems, every decision was taken by uh, people who were not uh, when you marry, two individuals come together, two families come together, but and but those two families don't have to live their lives with each other because ultimately it's the husband and the wife that uh, need that suffers when a wrong decision is taken by the parental authority. Uh, there was more tilt toward reason. Uh, why there was tilt towards reason? Because when there was this suppression, there was this parental control. Uh, People tend to reason with their elders, their parents, uh, and uh, if I remember my case, if I talk about my country, uh, trying to reason with elders, uh, when you try to reason or argument with your elders, they usually said that you're an insolent person, you are rude, you are disrespectful. Why? Because you challenge the authority of a superior system. Uh, there was, and these were the problems of uh, rich family systems who were run by money, by financial uh, resources. So uh, there were a lot of flaws uh, that were attached with the system. Now, if there was certain sort of marital control, it was uh, the control was wholesome. It was um, dictatorial. It was authoritative control. So youth or the young people, I would say, had no freedom. So that when they had no freedom, their right to sex was also flouted by the higher authority. So, in my, I will turn to my next slide. Realism. Realism and its meaning can be discussed when you uh, basically there were the three phases of modern drama and modernism when modernism came there was realism, there was romanticism, there were play of ideas, male's psychology and expressionism. So uh, let's start with realism. It depicted real life stories. An example can be a relationship between a husband and a wife. There was real life events are pivotal in these stories, in the argument. For example, when we had Samuel Richardson and Henry Fielding, between these two literature stalwarts, there was a fight, and they were endeavoring and struggling to argue with one another. There was scholarly exchange of hot words uh, to the extent that when Samuel Richardson wrote a novel uh, based on the chastity and the nobility of a woman known as Pamela. Uh, he wrote a counter novel to counter the arguments presented in that novel. He wrote Henry Fielding wrote another novel as I think Henry Fielding came up with another novel uh, um, which was a novel which discussed the male in male as an innocent being uh, who could do nothing against a woman, and the women are wicked. They instigate a male towards them, and then uh, uh, the males try to manipulate them, and the women tries to manipulate. Uh, uh, they would try to manipulate women. So women were uh, scared. The women were the Satan, were the Pharaoh, or you can say the villain of that time. And Henry uh, Fielding converted a poor woman, a poor and an innocent and a benign woman, as a very crooked being, which was not the fact. I would disagree with him. I would politely disagree with him because he was a great scholar, but and a novelist. He was a novelist actually, not a scholar. His knowledge was uh, very vast. But uh, all I can say is that he was a misogynist, and even uh, even uh, to the extent that he was um, to the extent that he was uh, uh, trying to outshine the they would try he would try to outshine the women's innocence. How can that be? It's nature's verdict that women are weak, they are poor, they are they can be manipulated easily, they can be threatened easily, and if you compare her with a male, uh, they will never pass the test of strength and courage and audacity, because these are the factors which are taken, uh, uh, which are a part and parcel of the male uh, rather than a female. So when we consider them strong, we would say that uh, because there was a time when physical strength was mattered a lot, but nowadays uh, but nowadays uh, women were they were not the type of they were not that strong. They were not robust like a man. A man is robust, he is tough, but a woman is weak. Uh, and that is the reason why a woman, uh, it is the duty of every man to protect the rights of a woman. So, so it was the realism uh, that was being depicted in the dramas of modern age. Real life events are pivotal in the stories. Argument, new life issues with real life issues were divorce, marriage, love or arranged, struggle of class, who one is more classy than others. The rich families were more into the shopping, and they, in a way, were very conservative when it came to their honor and vanity. Uh, so at certain times, uh, women were doing things which was against uh, the basic concept of a man. Women were against their own sex, because uh, the uneducated women thought that it was also a psychological effect. If we would try to if we would try to assign uh, psychoanalysis with modernism, you can have research on these two topics and the interlinkages between them, because modernism, uh, as I said earlier, was filled with the mental illnesses and diseased people who were scared, who were like a scared cat. A scared, they were not normal people, because uh, they came from a time when they lived in a time which, in which there was no sanctity of life, and there were no specified rules and regulations and law and order in the country. Uh, there was uh, a strange sort of hue and cry because of these two horrible wars. So that was the reason why realism came into being. Uh, and it discussed the real issues of a human being. It was the problem of higher class society. Higher class societies had many problems. There was a race of being superior by wearing expensive clothes, by wearing expensive watches, by having a good car, by having other valuables that were deemed important. And in this race of class, uh, in this race of class, there were certain sort of phobias that generated into the human minds. I read a consumer study from somewhere, and it said that they tried to sell a shampoo with a normal bottle and a very good uh, uh, sort of uh, uh, they have uh, renamed marketing department by saying that marketing is consumer psychology. Yes, modernism was also filled up with dealing with human psychology because, as I said, that it was the background that was uh, worrying for them. Uh, these societies, uh, which were higher class, uh, suppressed the poor and the weak. Uh, way of I would call them a primitive, a primitive sort of opinion because uh, of the preposterous way of meddling into each other's private life, be it the privacy of a person. But people at that time were so stubborn that they flouted and trespassed into other people's lives, freedom, their their rights were violated. Freedom of expression was violated. Civilized form of government was there, and elders were even like pharaohs, or I would say that they like uh, big dictatorial rules were imposed by the elders, or rather, I would say that they were superimposed by the elders, because elders never thought about these things. There was, as I said, that there was a race of being superior, and the elderly people, the people who had any sort of edge. For example, um, you may call it cultural edge, or money, in terms of money, monetary edge, or some sort of edge in other things. So they tried to manipulate uh, people with that uh, gift uh, that is given by the nature. Now I would uh, go to romanticism. It was another main feature of modern drama. It focused on emotion, nature, freedom, equality. Why? Because equality and freedom and nature was snatched from the hands of the people living in that age by the government, by uh, dictators, by rulers, and the people of that age was like uh, a child uh, who had some candies in his hands, and those candies were taken away very ruthlessly and vehemently. So and that was bit a part of the romanticism. Then there was play of ideas. Modern drama uh, was essentially a drama of ideas. It is a dramatist used expressions to ideas which they want to spread in society. There was a touch of human emotion. Again, I would say that people were emotional. They were hit psychologically because they never wanted that wars to happen. But uh, the weak has always been oppressed by the strong, by the mighty. So uh, these were the conditions prevailing at that society. So whenever when we will read a novel by Virginia Woolf, for example, Mr. Dalloway, or whenever we will read Harold Pinter, The Dumb Waiter, or you would you study postmodernism, you get to know why there was a concept of the theater of the absurd at that time. These ideas touched the emotions of people, and uh, when it touched human emotions, when it touched human emotions, it was gruesome sort of situation, and when they were they were emotionally blackmailed by people because it was a time uh, when the weak was not given its due importance. So when I would then I would come to the male psychology. Now, uh, in rich societies and the societies that were prevalent at that time were male dominated. Males were the masters of that time, and women were uh, just thought to be a housewife with women was deemed like a housewife, and they were making dishes, and they were uh, managing the whole department of the home department of that person. But uh, that was a symbol of the inferiority of women, and they were into an inferiority complex that they were less than men because men ruled at that time. That time uh, in which families were uh, pursuing a dream not accomplished. So I would go to my next point, and that is expressionism. Expressionism is a style of art and music which uses exaggeration to represent emotions rather than physical reality. There is distortion of real feelings in a theoretical element of exaggerated and distorted reality. Uh, Parental control was strict as a matter that nobody dared to overrule or even express his opinion merely. Uh, uh, they were uh, hypocritical in that area. So women were so I would come again to the um, I would come to the main crux of the time that expressionism was a style of art, and I would again come to the male psychology. Women were reduced to who have just there to satisfy hungry souls, including their husbands. They had no say in financial matters. For example, in Bernard Shaw's drama, The Arms and the Men, the person who was the family elder was insistently proving his, was insistently trying to prove that her female counterpart, was wrong and he was right. Basically, he placed some clothes in a cupboard, and uh, the wife was insisting that it is in that cupboard, and he was saying, no, go watch. But when uh, they searched for it, they came to know that it was in that cupboard in which the, the female counterpart was mentioning. So so it was applicable in that minutest sense. Uh, Very quickly, I will come to the last slide. That is George Bernard. There were these legendary poets of that time. George Bernard Shaw was writer of was dramatist of sort that he used to accommodate comedy into his genre. Harold Pinter, as I said, was uh, writing dramas with stream of consciousness. He was writing dramas of theater of the absurd. Why called theater of the absurd? Because this theater of the absurd, why? Because people were like mad, they were crazy. And so came the vacuum for the theater of the absurd. Samuel Beckett, it was a masterpiece of Pinter. And The Dumb Waiter was the perfect example of his opinion in society. Ordinary people's language, they were compressed, rhythmic lines, hit into they he tried to hit into darker meanings and connotations. So Samuel Beckett was a modernist and reformed culture. He rejected complex plots, was stark, minimalist, deeply pessimistic. Now I would come to Henrik Ibsen. Uh, uh, his themes were financial difficulty, moral conflict, from secrets hidden from society. but he was his genre and writing style was realistic, uh, that pertained to real situation, not fantasies. So uh, Henrik Ibsen wrote about humans, no fairy tales. So that was it. I tried to include uh, many factors to this presentation. Introductory uh, introduction to modernism. Thank you. This is Usman Nazim signing off. Thank you.